meaningfully talk about potential defamation in an internet forum is an open question. What do you think? I mean, do you think we should view comments on internet forums with the same kind of rigour as we view, for example, letters to the editor or journalistic statements? Is that a reasonable standard for ISPs, for publishers? I'll give you another example of how, like, the potential causes of action that make themselves available online. So New Zealand, across the way, a guy had been brought before the courts for murder in a small town, murder of a small child. And as the trial was underway, a Facebook group was set up saying, this guy's, the scum of the earth and a terrible character, and he's killed this girl and he's all these things. He was subsequently found to be not guilty, and the group stayed up, and people kept commenting in the group, and they kept talking about the judgment and how what a disgrace it was, what a travesty of justice was, how everybody knew that he'd done it. And he successfully, I think, sued Facebook, actually, and made them take that down, and that was held to be defamatory. Does that strike you as a plausible situation? Does that strike you as a useful precedent? Or now, do you think that's an infringement of freedom of speech? Now, I'd pledge that I would play the kind of devil's advocate in this debate. And I wonder whether this doesn't, place too hopeful a store on measured, reasoned discourse and the potential for the internet to kind of house that and this sort of emancipated all debate is good debate. Is there something different about the internet and the debate that takes place on the internet and the way in which people may or may not take responsibility for it? That means we should have a different kind of regulatory environment than print media, for example. But is this assuming that there's a kind of support infrastructure for the provision of this information? And so that even someone like Philip Nitschke, readers are going to come to that material probably through a website, an official website. They're going to come to that with kind of support information. There's an element of kind of responsibility, if you like, in the way that information is being disseminated. There's a kind of legal person behind it. Whereas anonymous comments online, is it just censorship to take them down, or is it something more? So we're just talking about the ways in which media regulations that apply to print and broadcast media might sit a little less comfortably in online environments. So particularly in user-generated content situations and with regard to comments. So for now we do, as I said, have this kind of mishmash regulatory situation where we have kind of the common law of defamation. We have a whole series of state-based statutes about vilification, racial hatred and whatnot. We have copyright laws, and we also have the Broadcasting Act and the amended Broadcasting Act and all of these other laws around the internet. Do you as video journalists, as journalists working online, see kind of a way of adapting, for example, the defamation laws or qualifying the defamation laws to make them more workable online? Does the ease with which we can publish material online make it, lower the bar? What do you think? Should the law of defamation apply to Facebook statuses? This might be why something like The New Yorker, which is an interesting example to bring up, is so traditional online, and these outlets who have gained these reputations for journalistic integrity are the ones that really don't allow comments on their site. You can go to the New Yorker site, you see exactly what you see on the New Yorker, plus a few little kind of bloggy bits and pieces, but you can't comment on it. All of the kind of dynamic features of the modern web are basically unavailable to users unless you go off the site. So you can share things via Twitter or via Facebook, but you can't have your say on their site. And I think that's quite telling in terms of caution, and as an effort to kind of distinguish what goes on in those editorial environments to other, if we want to call them editorial, social media as an editorial environment. Well, I think what is clear is that the technology is just so far ahead of the law, and lawmakers continue to struggle to kind of come to terms with it. And so we see things like this debate about the internet filter, which, whatever side of the moral fence you sit on, is plainly very, very detached from the way people use technology and from the actual productivity elements, if you like, of the technology. Look, what you should do is have a look at the Defamation Act, and Section 30 of that lays out several defences. Substantial truth is defence to defamation, but that is quite a more difficult to satisfy than not, because the way people get defamed is by what's called imputations, like insinuations. So you might be, and then kind of innuendo in a particular statement. So you might say the judge left 35 Commonwealth Street with a smile on his face, and if the imputation, if everyone knows that 35 Commonwealth Street is a gay brothel, and then the imputation is that a number of things arise from that maybe he's a married man, he's been cheating on his wife, that he's gay, that he frequents this kind of establishment. You need to be able to prove not only the truth of the statement that he left this, number 35 Commonwealth Street with a smile on his face, but all the other imputations that arise as well. So you need to substantially prove them to be true. Now that is a difficult, especially if you are in the world of kind of innuendo, that's a difficult thing to prove. Contextual proof, honest opinion, but let me tell you what the elements of honest opinion are. It has to be a comment rather than a statement of fact. The person who made it has to believe that the statement isn't untrue, and it has to be not actuated by malice. So honest opinion is, they're not easy defences to prove, I guess. Yeah, I mean, whenever you do, when you study media law, or when you're talking to lawyers, there is always going to be this kind of push-pull between lawyers saying, be careful, that's defamatory. I mean, everything is defamatory, just a matter of whether you have a defence for it. Be careful. And this desire to kind of go out there and actually, push the envelope or break new ground or whatever your cliche about, adventurous journalism might be. That applies again online. You can probably get away with more now, particularly in kind of rogue environments. But I guess the take home for all of this is to bear in mind that it is, there's a whole sea of potential litigation that can take place. But yeah, to bear in mind that you are very much liable, in a media law sense, for everything that you do online. And if you have a blog, for everything that other people do in reaction to your diligent investigative journalism and hard-hitting analysis online.